I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't call out for help. My arms were pinned down to my side, and only a squeak came out as I tried to yell. You are listening to The Divine Now. I'm Mark Archambault. I'm going to read a chapter from my book, Spirit, A Supernatural Life. This one's called The Hag. Although I'd seen Ouija boards in use, I'd never placed my hands on one in action. Any temptation I may have had was removed years ago while living in Montana. The same summer, my out-of-body travel took a leap forward. A few friends brought a board to my house for a try. I took an instant disliking to it. Even looking at the box gave me the willies. I used the excuse of work the next day to go to bed early. The fact was, I couldn't stay in the room with it. I'd never had this reaction to an object before, but by the end of the evening I understood why. My rented house was a small 2-story with a master bedroom directly above the dining room. It was some time after midnight. I was sound asleep in my waterbed when I felt a hand grip my throat with terrifying force. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. I couldn't call out for help. My arms were pinned down to my side, and only a squeak came out as I tried to yell. In my head, I heard a shrill scream. It seemed to me to come from everywhere at once. I could see something blurry hovering a few inches over my head. The face of an old woman came into focus. She was angry. Her mouth was wide open as her sound filled my mind. She was pissed. Over the course of several seconds, I began to gasp. Soon a high-pitched yelp came out. At that point in my young life, I'd never been so afraid. The vision vanished and my arms began to function once again. I fumbled for the light switch. The room was empty. My heart slammed in my chest. I was cold and covered in sweat. Hearing voices downstairs, I threw on pants and headed to the kitchen. I had forgotten all about my guest and their game. I asked my friends what was going on. They had just completed a session and were excited to tell me all about how they had made contact with a beloved grandmother who had recently died. She stopped by to say hello to me too, was the beginning of my reply. The end of my reply was throwing their game on the front yard and going back to bed. Once again, under my covers, I stayed awake for the rest of the night. I have no doubt that it is possible to open a channel of communication with the spirit world using any number of gimmicks. A Ouija board is just a way to focus energy and enable connection. Tarot cards and channeling are also favorites of some. The problem lies with what and who you're connecting with. From an evangelical Christian perspective, everything that's not God or an angel is a demon. From a metaphysical view, spirit energy is beneficent, benign, or negative. I try not to get hung up on words used to name things, but what I went through that night was evil, pure evil. One of the cable networks aired a program on paranormal activity a few years ago and described my experience perfectly. It seems this woman is known as the Hag and is somewhat common. As of this writing, I've never seen the Hag again. My next choking came years later while heavily involved in Christian ministry. I just came back from a wonderful trip to Canada that included many supernatural experiences. I floated home energized by spirit. It was just before dawn when I finally got to sleep. A few minutes later, I was awake and being choked by unseen hands. There was no hag involved this time, but the effect was no less frightening. After many seconds in the grip, I was set free. This time, I had managed to call out Jesus. I was shaken, but considered it a sign that I was on the right track and that Satan was trying to stop me. Throughout the years since, I've been physically attacked in this way many times. It's always come during a season of heavy supernatural activity. Other members of my family have experienced the same attacks. My wife and I have been choked at the same time. Sometimes there's a face to go with this evil. This has always taken a male form and changes appearance from one episode to the next. Eventually, it made me somewhat cavalier about the matter. Like anything negative, you can just learn to shake it off. I've been asked if the source of this power to manifest energy in physical form could be coming from my own mind. Could it be telekinesis? But if that's so, why has it happened to people in my home when I was in other parts of the country? Why do I have no control over it? I'm not ruling out the possibility. In fact, I would love to add a more positive form of telekinesis to my journey. If it is, as I assume, coming from an outside source, I'm no longer convinced that I need to be on the right track to be a target. Frankly, I don't know why it happens, other than that the timing is always with other more positive experiences. If I failed to state it before, this is not a how-to book. I've merely compiled episodes from my life for your consideration. That ends the chapter. Let me throw in, I've been really careful as I wrote this book not to use buzzwords, Christianese, metaphysical words. I try to avoid that. I've tried to lay out a set of supernatural experiences in a way that anyone, regardless of church background or belief system, can at least get the information and understand it. Whether you believe it or not, that's really between you and you. I know what I've experienced. And as I've said many times, if my faith is based on something I've read or something someone has told me, then I can read a different thing or be told a different thing and change my mind or change my faith. Instead, my faith is based on the experiences that I've lived because no one can take those away from me. You're listening to the Divine Now podcast. May the Lord bless and keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you. I am Mark Archambault. Have a great day.